Coating a screen is really not that difficult, but very important in order to develop. Coating a screen is not very difficult, but it's very important that it's done correctly. Now, when coating a screen, you're going to use what's called a scoop coater. Now, scoop coaters come with a round and a sharp edge. And essentially, the difference is a round edge will allow you to lay much more emulsion onto the screen versus the sharp edge will allow you to lay less. Now, why would you want to lay more emulsion onto the screen itself? It all comes down to the ink deposit. Ink deposit will really essentially allow the film to become thicker and essentially allow on the press for more ink to be printed onto the garment, which can often help with opacity. Now, when it comes to scoop coaters, not only is there a round and a flat side to really be worrying about, but you need to be worrying about the actual size of the coater itself. There are many different types of screen sizes, the two most common being a 23 by 31 and the second most common being a 20 by 24. If you're going to be using both of these screen sizes in your shop, it's a good idea to have two different coaters, one for each size of the screen. The reason is we want to have a coater that gets really close to the actual inside and outside of the screen itself, the frame, so that when we're coating it, we have emulsion that is almost covering the entire part of the frame, and then we only have to tape the edges and so forth. If you're using, for instance, a coater like this that's too small, and we coat this 23 by 31, we're gonna have to be using a lot of tape to protect the screen from any ink getting onto our product. So for our 23 by 31, we've got a coater here already filled with photopolymer emulsion. The difference between a photopolymer and a dual cure emulsion is dual cure has to be mixed with diazo beforehand. And that diazo will allow the exposure latitude, or essentially more play, to occur when exposing the screen and sometimes allow you to hold more detail. Now in this demonstration, I want to essentially put what's called a 1 and 2 coat on the screen. I want a really thick ink deposit because I'm on an 86 mesh screen and I'm going to use white ink with this, and I want it to be very opaque. So when it comes to coating the screen, you're always going to coat the print side first. This is the print side and it's completely flat, versus the inside is the squeegee side of the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two hands and push the coater against the screen, and then bring the emulsion and push the entire coater against the screen. Essentially, it's meant to be able to do this so that the emulsion is even. Bring it back with some pressure, drag the coater up the screen, tilt it back, cut it off. Now, we need to coat the squeegee side, or essentially the inside part of the frame. Now, when we do that, we want to actually coat the emulsion up on the opposite side. So we ran the emulsion up here, so when we flip it, we actually want the emulsion to go down that way, so they essentially go against one another. So we're going to just flip the screen entirely, and you can see this is where I started on the last time, and now we're going to start down here for the squeegee side. It's the same process. We're just going to coat it, tilt it back. Now, coating the inside squeegee side is much more difficult. I mean, it's not terribly difficult, but you are messing with the frame itself, so you have a little bit more obstacles to get around. Now, if you want a thicker ink deposit, another way besides just using the round edge of the scoop coater is to actually coat the inside squeegee part of the screen another time. This will allow for, again, a thicker ink deposit. Now, it's very important to know, though, when you do this, you are going to be changing the exposure time for the screen. Every time we're changing any variables, such as the amount of emulsion, type of emulsion, screen mesh, color, and exposure unit, they're all going to be affecting the actual exposure time. All right. And it's really that simple as far as coating a screen. Now, when it comes to actually drying a coated screen, there are two different methods. One, you could just store it on a shelf and let it air dry. Now, that's going to take several hours, and you run the risk of, any little variable such as dust and debris potentially getting on the screen, bubbling of emulsion, and so forth. The other way is to actually use what's called a screen drying cabinet. Now, a screen drying cabinet is essentially going to be using air and heat to dry the screen. Now, no matter what method you use to dry your screens, the most important aspect is that you actually store them bookshelf. So essentially, the print side faces down, squeegee side faces up, and the reason is gravity is going to pull onto the screen, and we want the emulsion to essentially make all of its way onto the print side of the actual screen. And essentially, again, gravity is going to do that for us naturally. Most screen drying cabinets, if you use them, depending on how much emulsion and so forth, you could be drying your screens in as little as half an hour to an hour, and then be on press much quicker. If you have any questions about coating a screen or anything else related to screen printing, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.